Welcome everyone to another Flight of the Next podcast. I'm Holly. We're here with Eric Subijano, Dean, and a new guest or host, Ben Bromley. Good evening, everyone.
Well,
Evening.
Good evening.
Eric, could you just introduce yourself briefly?
Oh yes, that's right. So I've known Holly and Dean for a while now. This is the first time I've met Ben. Ben, but I am a commentator for Football New South Wales, so call a lot of NPL New South Wales women's games, and therefore have seen a fair bit of the both current and former Wellington Phoenix players during what you might term the A-League Women off-season, so playing in the winter comp here in Sydney. So that's why I've been invited onto this.
Good to hear. Ben, did you want to start with a question?
Ooh, straight off the bat. Yeah, so I just one of the main things I want to know is like how did you become a commentator? Like what made you want to be one?
Okay, so previously I'd been a writer for Football New South Wales covering the second tier men's comp up here so long story short, when the coverage was expanded from 2020 onwards to more games, I just put my hand up and they gave me I think some lower profile games in the competition I was covering at the time, but that's expanded as I asked for more women's games and got them. And yeah, so that's just continued on from there. So I've just completed my 4th season as a commentator for Football New South Wales. So that's how. So I think I was kind of already in the system, if that makes sense.
It's good to know, especially because it's good that NPL TV is available overseas, and I think that there are people, Ben included, who have actually regularly been watching the NPL, and so they've probably heard your dulcet tones over the season, which is always good. I'm always excited when I know who's on the call. So I think we could start. So moving on from commentary, how roughly are the NPL and the State League structured within the Australian football pyramid?
Yes. So perhaps it might be best to explain it from before A-League Women expanded, so when it was only 12 to 14 games. So it kind of fit in, the state comps fit nicely in that gap between summer seasons. So players such as Malia Steinmetz, I think not a Phoenix player, but a very popular player among Kiwis. She would, in between that, play for Northern Tigers, and pretty much the seasons didn't clash at all. So yeah, maybe she'd only miss a couple of weeks here and there. And of course, there's equivalent comps obviously in Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, Western Australia, and Capital Football, which covers Canberra and the surrounding regions. So obviously, we like to think that in New South Wales our comp's the best, and because it attracts most of the Kiwis that come over here, and a lot of ex-Phoenix players. I'm sure you think it's the best as well. But it's a tricky time because with A-League Women expanding, the overlap period is now getting more and more. So we could see players kind of not, if they're regular starters in the dub, perhaps not play NPL anymore, just keep training or doing something else, chase overseas training opportunities or whatever. Or if they do play NPL, you'd almost like they'd be on loan from their A-League women teams and only play like half a season. So it'd be interesting to see how that's managed. And it's actually a lot of challenges for people smarter than me as to how they work the competition, both competitions around that.
How are you mentioned some of the state leagues are better than others. So I've also heard that the Victorian NPL isn't too bad.
Yep.
How would you compare them?
It's hard to say without the teams playing each other at some point. I know there was a All-Stars game with Victoria beating Queensland recently, although that anyone that had earned an A-League women contract couldn't play because they were already in preseason training. So I don't know, unless you create a Women's Australia Cup, which I think they're trying to do at some point, it'd be hard to judge the strength. One way I suppose you could do it is by tracking interstate movement. So I know NPL New South Wales gets a lot of people, especially from Canberra, but sometimes they come down from Queensland or Victoria. But Victoria also gets a fair few players coming in from Western Australia and South Australia. So that could be one way, seeing who moves where in terms of interstate stuff. The other thing would just be possibly a fairer way, because moving interstate, obviously, for a couple of months is quite difficult. Measuring the number of A-League women contracted players in each squads, in each state comp. So Victoria obviously has a lot because you've got Western United, Melbourne City, and Melbourne Victory. And yeah, in fact, South Australia, given I think that when that time a couple of years ago when Adelaide United made the semis with a bunch of locals, then that competition must be doing a pretty good job as well. So it's really hard. It's really hard to say. Of course, I think population just kind of puts the Sydney comp or the NPL New South Wales comp. By the way, we call it NPL New South Wales. It's pretty much NPL Sydney plus a team in Wollongong and a team in Newcastle. But because it doesn't, because to make it, because by the way, especially for the Kiwis, Australian football is seemingly always more complicated than it needs to be. So New South Wales is actually covered by 2 state federations. So from Newcastle up to the Queensland border, that's its own state federation called Northern New South Wales. So I don't know why we have 2 state feds. and then there's Capital Football, which is meant to cover just ACT, but for practical reasons it covers most of southern New South Wales as well. So yeah, I think I've confused everyone, so someone else should probably start talking.
No, you actually answered the question I was going to ask and talk about, sort of like, it goes to Newcastle down to Illawarra Stingrays. Is there any scope for expansion, you think, in the region?
Expansion? Any form of expansion would be, I think, through admitting teams to the second tier, which is called League One Women's. I think. I suspect they try to mimic the English men's naming by calling the divisions, Championship, League One, and League Two, like in English men's. But I think the championship, someone else trademarked the championship term in Australia first. So instead we have NPL New South Wales and League One. They did that recently by adding a bunch of teams from Western Sydney and South Coast Flame, who are based kind of near Stingrays. So if they were to expand the state comps, it'd be by admitting teams into the second tier, and then maybe they would get promoted. So we would see, we might talk about this a bit more. Promotion relegation between the 2 tiers. One team goes up, one team goes down. Unfortunately, Bankstown City, featuring Brianna Edwards, they were relegated this season. And coming up will be the University of New South Wales. So it remains to be seen, obviously, if University of New South Wales have any Kiwis next year. Our teams are allowed to sign 2 visa players per club. So.
So why are they called National Premier Leagues and not just state leagues?
That's again.
It's
always overcomplicate
Premier Leagues, and you're like,
yes.
Oh, they actually run a comp across the country, but it's not the case. Maybe you don't have the answer, but I'm curious.
This naming change, I don't know exactly why, although because it kind of was brought in firstly for the state men comps and then over to the women's comps before I started really following them. It's about someone decided that this was the way to brand things, and it was in conjunction with a final, they call it the National Premier League Final Series for men's, which is basically the winners from all the men's top tier state comps played in a knockout competition, and then the winner was the national champion of that. The competition, COVID kind of killed that one. But for short answer, I don't know why. It is effectively the same competition as when it used to be called New South Wales Premier League. I know that for teams to be called, for a comp to be called National Premier Leagues, there has to be certain requirements in terms of the coaching qualifications for basically everyone involved in the clubs, and that's not just first grade, that's all down to the youth. So I think is minimum C license for under 14s and then over to whatever license you need to be involved in first grade. There might be some other off-field stuff like financial stuff and facilities as well. But to answer, I don't really know the answer to your question, but I suspect to use the Newcastle comp or Northern New South Wales as an example, they went from being Northern New South Wales Premier League to NPL Northern New South Wales for this year. And the cynic in me says it's just kind of a box ticking exercise, because if the name has changed, maybe some things have changed, but I'm not sure the standard has actually changed that much.
Well, I mean, the Jets play in the regular New South Wales
Yes, they
anyway,
do.
so
They do. And more
how do
complicated
daily
stuff.
academies work? Perhaps you could talk
Ah,
about, please.
yes. Well, I mean, also there's a little bit of controversy with Capital Football, who runs Canberra United, deciding they will disband the much loved Canberra United Academy, way outside the scope of a Phoenix podcast. But yeah, pretty much everyone is filthy about the decision. But so, if I think 2015 was the first year the Jets Academy played in the Sydney comp, or NPL New South Wales. I'm going to guess the decision was to get a higher standard of competition in Sydney as opposed to Newcastle, because of course you remember not just first grade, but it meant all their youth from 14s up was also playing in Sydney comp, and at least the idea going testing themselves against better opposition. And it's, despite Jets basically rarely winning first grade games, I think it does okay in terms of developing players. You'll all know Mona Walker, who I saw for the first time, I think, as a 16 or 17-year-old with the Jets Academy, and was very impressed. There's also Claire Wheeler, I think is the standout. Now in the Matilda squad, also players like Kirsty Fenton at Sydney FC. So it does its play to, hey, there we go, Dean. Yes, it does its job, I think, reasonably well, but it's just, I do wonder if there's a better way to do it. It's been said especially by people that have had to call emerging Jets games, can be a tough watch, given that they've basically won 2 games in the last 4 seasons.
So they can't be relegated.
Yes, they cannot.
I'm so confused. You look at the table and it's like, oh, Jets are at the bottom, they'll get relegated. But no,
they can't.
Bankstown City got relegated.
First thing is, youth academies can't get relegated under the current competition regulations, so that covers emerging Jets and Football New South Wales Institute, which is kind of like the state academy for the whole of Football New South Wales territory. And of course there's equivalents in the other states playing in their own state NPLs. Youth academies can't get relegated. To make it more confusing, there's also Bulls FC Academy in our comp, with, I think, Charlotte Lancaster did very well for them this year. They got academy in their name. They're not an academy. They've also got players in their 30s. And they can get relegated. Although, yes. See, this is Australian. It's like, it's good to be on I mean, although 2 of you do live in Sydney with me, it's good to be on a Kiwi podcast, so I can expose Australian football for the bin fire that it is.
Some Australians might watch this. Just watch out.
Yeah, they better agree with me.
Ben, you must have some questions now.
Yes.
Yes. So what? It went emerging Jets down the bottom, and then it skipped all the way up to Bankstown getting relegated.
Yeah. So now I get on to club championships. So we don't just take into account first grade when we decide promotion and relegation for the women's. So I can't remember which former Football Australia TD suggested this, but he basically decided to ensure that clubs care about youth. He recommended club championships. So the NPL New South Wales Club Championship involves first grade, reserve grade, and under 18s. So combining the points from all of those, it ended up with Bankstown City, despite them being mid-table, they did not very well in reserve grade and 18s, and so it was them that got relegated based on poor youth performance, shall we say. So yeah, it's interesting though, because I have this same discussion sometimes with people from other states, because I think Football New South Wales are the only state that does club championships. Everyone just goes off first grade. And in fact, we got rid of the club championship for our men's comps, so it's only the women's comps that use comps other than first grade to decide promotion and relegation.
Let's talk about some of the other problems.
Yes, we got problems.
With the, I mean, it is confusing, and I think for the most part, it's a matter of if you want to watch the NPL or the state leagues, just watch. Don't worry too much about.
Don't ask too many questions.
How it works. Don't ask too many questions. But I mean, there's been a lot of issues with that semi-pro level. So I'm going to call semi-pro below the A leagues, but above grassroots. So your state leagues and your NPL leagues. There've been issues with academies. I've heard a lot of issues about the massive cost of playing NPL, like $4,000. I've heard issues with player churn going from club to club to club. There also seem to be issues with favoritism amongst certain groups. What do we need to do? Like, what does the semi-pro level need, perhaps, to improve upon?
Yes, the people in Australian football argue all the time. Youth football being too expensive is one of the few things we all agree on. But the problem is, I don't like to talk about Australian rules football, but just using it as a counter example, in Australian rules football, the top funds the bottom. So it's, if you want to get your young kid involved in Australian rules, it's very cheap and easy to do. But in football, it's the other way around. So the bottom funds the top. So like, and if you play, for example, like you, Holly, playing in what, Canterbury Association, I'm sure you've seen the breakdown. Part of your money, part of your rego fee, well, a lot of your rego fee goes to either Football New South Wales or Football Australia, and it's the same thing with the youth programs for these NPL youth clubs. So a conservative estimate for SAP, for what we call skill acquisition program, which is for women's under 10s to under 13s, that is maybe $1,600, might be a bit more. And then for NPL youth, which is 14s, under 14s, 15s, 16s, and 18s, that goes up to $2,400 maybe, and that's before. And that's, and you can discuss this, but really the standard practice is you only have 2 installments to pay that, which is steep to say the least. I mean, I'm sure. But by the way, at the club I work for, Manly United, I mean, I'm sure they will, if arrangements need to be made, that can be discussed. But it is an interesting time, especially because from when you get selected in these youth programs, which has happened now, like I think we're close to finalizing our squads. A lot of the other clubs will be the same. Then there's people already coming in and paying these fees for the first installment of their fees for next season. And so, yeah, it's we don't need. I mean, this is not really the place to talk about cost of living, but you know, it's finding $1,200. I mean, it's not something that is easy for a lot of people.
But just thinking about, you know, all the undiscovered Sam Kerrs out there that just never play just because of the cost.
They will do what maybe they do what Sam Kerr did it in alternate universe and play Australian rules and go into AFLW.
I got a question for Ben. Ben, you usually have a review of the NPL matches pretty darn quickly after they happen. How much of the games do you actually watch? Did you watch them all?
So I normally have them on. I got 2 screens here.
Yes.
So depending on who, I normally watch the Phoenix players play. So say if Cully Brown and Ava Pritchard are playing at 6, I'd have them on one screen. And then Chico and Mona Walker might play like an hour and a half later, so I have them on that screen. And then during half time, I'll just write while I watch. And then after, just do it.
It's an impressive effort, though. I usually manage one a weekend, but well done.
So Ben, you would be very reliant on quality of commentator, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Yes. As I used to write, and this firstly I have on occasion had to write up games that I am commentating, which is not fun at all, doing the double, so to speak. But yeah, it's sometimes you want a bit of assistance, especially, I mean, you would have experienced some very some very shifty camera angles in our competition, especially Northern Tigers and North Taramara Recreation Area. But yeah, that's when you need the commentator's help. I hope I've done my best, but yeah, it can be very difficult sometimes.
No, you're one of the better ones, so don't worry. I would say it was not bad.
If you, Ben, just to give you an idea, most of the grounds that we go to, there's sort of rickety-looking scaffolding.
Oh yes.
And there's 2 people perched on that, and it doesn't matter if it's blowing a gale and it's as cold as Bowery. And yeah, and then for them to actually sort of remember everybody's names and some pertinent facts about them, it's yeah. Well, you've done it for, as you said, 5 years, but yeah, bloody good job, Eric.
Yes, thank you. Oh, yeah. I'm glad I've actually seen a photo. That reminds me, I saw a photo of the very lightweight scaffolding at the Illawarra Stingrays home ground, Macedonia Park. So it's very exposed, and it looks like I could have shaken it with one hand. So, I'm glad I haven't drawn that short straw.
So what's your process like if you're going to commentate? Because I've come over and I've said hello at halftime to people who've been commentating for the NPL, and they've got these like notebooks. They're just like tiny scrawl all over the place, and laptops out and the giant headphones. What's the process of being a commentator?
Yeah, so I think I'll start with the ideal scenario, somewhere with cover. Sydney Uni is probably a good example. I mean, well, actually, it's the ideal example because there's a bar in the grandstand. So, but you've got access to power there as well. So, NPL TV, it runs off a 20 to 30-second delay, roughly, off real time. So, way better than Paramount. But so you could have the stream in front of you, and if you miss something, you've got like one chance at seeing the replay just to see if you could see if you could pick up something you missed. Although I wouldn't recommend skipping back through the stream if you missed that one time, because then you're just like not focusing on the game. I don't know if you've ever done those exams where you can bring in like an A4 page of notes, but commentary prep reminds me of those. Suddenly your writing gets incredibly neat. Like my writing is terrible normally, but I think so like under the pressure of the job, I actually become like reasonably neat for once. It's my approach is just because people will know if you keep having to think when matching shirt number to player name. So a lot of my notes is actually numbers and names. So like for example, Claudia Chico number 2 for RPL Leichhardt. And then I do somehow fit on league position, recent results, and luckily for NPL, there's Opta, the stat company. They do stats for the top tier, so we do get that. So I mean, you can't just read off it. You have to actually do a bit of reading through it to see what's most interesting. But a big example being what Kelly Brown, not just top of the goals, but up near the top, I think, if not the top in terms of assists as well. So she obviously had a great season for MacArthur Rams, and I think fully deserved that she's back with Wellington Phoenix. But yeah, other stuff like that. There's some of the lesser interesting stuff like minutes played, so you can see who's done the most minutes in a team, or if you do some quick maths, you can figure out if anyone has actually played every single minute over the course of a season. Things that, the standard stats like Jules 1, so Jules like 50-50s, whether it's in the air or on the ground. And I do like that they have, they kind of pick up the best 5 or 6 interesting facts for you, like if a player's leading the lead in Jules, that gets highlighted, or if a player's scored in a number of consecutive games, that gets picked up as well. So yeah, it's good to have that help. That's come in. That's new for this year. That was new for 2023. So we had to fly a bit blind in previous years. If you don't get that, it's really just about luckily because of what I mentioned previously with a lot of the Australian players basically playing and rotating between A-League Women and NPL. Like I do know a lot of these players, and it actually has helped that players, it's what I call the Great Sydney Migration, players moving to Sydney for the winter to play NPL New South Wales, which, if you're curious, I think started with Kyra Cooney Cross in 2018 when she was like 16 years old, and she just said, I've outgrown Victoria, I'm going to play in New South Wales now, which is, although that does possibly lead into another issue with favoritism in Australian football because of, well, she would, just briefly, bit controversial, but Kyra played for Football New South Wales Institute, and Football New South Wales Institute players, they all a lot of them come from the same high school, Westfield Sports High School in Western Sydney, okay, which, I mean, has developed a lot of players, but so Ellie Carpenter, Princess Abini, etc. But yeah, perhaps funneling people to one high school may not be the best idea. But sorry, I've gotten sidetracked. Oh yeah, not for the first time. But yeah, it's just, yeah, because all these players are playing NPL, even the ones that from interstate that then go back to Adelaide United or Brisbane Roar or whatever. So I've been lucky in that, yeah, watching A-League Women helps me know NPL more and the other way around. So that's kind of that. It's not something, because I have less notes than most other commentators. It's not something you can do overnight, but if you're passionate about the sport, it helps a lot.
If you said your favorite place to commentate was Sydney Uni, and they do have a very nice stand.
Yes.
It's nice as a spectator too. What's your least favorite place to commentate?
It's not Northern Tigers. I'm trying to think what it was.
I mean, it depends what you're rating it on. Like,
Yeah.
whether you've got shelter, or
Yeah.
whether you're going to get tetanus from the stands, or whether it's cold.
Lambert Park.
I mean, I don't know how anyone can do Christie Park because that's freezing.
Yes, it is. At least it has a scaffolding now. It was ground level last year, and I remember players talking to me and said, I can't see anything from this. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's difficult, but I'm sure. I mean, apart from Sydney Uni, Manly United have a covered grandstand as well, but then it does become a test of your player identification with some of the lower down vantage points. I mean, it's not an NPL in the women's second tier, but Mount Druitt Town Rangers, it's not very elevated, and that gets difficult. And also their lights are they're not great. Also, Petermore Field, which you would be very familiar with, that's the lights aren't great. Photographers have told me that, and the surface also is it basically encourages direct football because it's not good.
What's the coldest you've ever been?
In commentary I can't remember because I think I've made sure I'm good with the thermals and the gloves now, but I actually remember, like, so for those that don't know, in men's, before I started working for Manly United, I used to support Blacktown City, and this is a game against like pretty traditional rivals, Bonnyrigg White Eagles, down at their ground, and it was awful. It was must have been like 2 degrees. Blacktown gave up the lead twice in a 2-2 draw, and at full time I didn't care. I just wanted to get to the car. It's like I don't care about the drop points. It was very, very miserable. But I think because I'm used to Christie Park, or the Arctic Circle as we like to call it, that ground doesn't bother me so much. But it is funny watching like the away team shiver in the middle of winter as they go out to try and warm up.
Those Sunday evenings, it's sort of like 6 o'clock at dark, and at North Turramurra, and the wind and the rain's coming up that hill.
Yeah.
That's
North Turramurra there. That's because North Turramurra's elevated as well. It's like when the wind blows in the wrong direction, it catches those high cold ocean winds. Yeah, it's not pleasant.
So what you can probably catch for people who are listening, and for Ben, is there's kind of a community of neutrals who show up to these matches, and it's kind of a big deal of like discussing, what your favorite ground is, what are the chips like at which ground, what's the hot chocolate like, what kinds of milk do they have available at that ground, is it sheltered, is it not sheltered, and we could talk forever and ever about it. Where's the best hot chocolate?
I have a vote.
It's not Pluim Park.
It's not. Okay. Good to know. I don't mind Plume Park. But I actually haven't been there in 4 years because the Central Coast have their own commentator. Some Central Coast Mariners ground announcer Pete Pryor, who you may hear his voice on Saturday. But it's good because I've thought about it. I think I'm actually like the second closest commentator to Plume Park, despite the fact I live in Western Sydney. So good on Pete. Good. Actually, Christie Park's not bad for hot chocolate. I think they also have some kind of milk alternatives. I can't remember if they have lactose-free milk. Megan will be my friend Megan, who loves her lactose-free milk. She'll be embarrassed that I don't already know this. I know Lambert Park do a good mocha and a good hot chocolate. They don't have lactose-free milk though. I just assume Sydney Uni would be good at this as well because I mean that bar does have a coffee machine. It's pretty good coffee at least. The Northern Tigers canteen is good if it's open. when you get, and also
if
you,
you go-
can't
you
see
go
from
to
the
the golf
ground
shop.
either. So, sorry.
There's a golf canteen,
golf
and then there's the
Oh yeah,
Northern
there is the
Tigers
golf canteen. I have used the golf canteen as well.
golf canteen. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Well, I mean, I assume so. If it's servicing golfers, they demand the best.
My vote for the best hot chocolate is Linwood Park.
Actually, yeah, that is pretty good down there.
Tops. And I have a great memory of watching you sitting in the stand with us. You're watching MacArthur versus Northern Tigers. You've got your laptop open, you're streaming one game, and you're also doing the social media for Manly as well.
Oh yes, that was.
There's like
Yes.
multitasking in football.
Yeah.
I was very impressed by that.
Yes. Yeah. So hopefully this doesn't ruin the fantasy for anyone that thinks I watch all Manly United first grade games. I do not. That's why NPL TV exists. I can keep track of it. For my full-time graphic, I got Canva. All I need to know is who scored, and then I can just do the full-time posts. And I think so. The most random place I remember doing a Manly men's full-time graphic from Wollongong's Wynn Stadium in Wollongong, because the Manly had played and Wollongong had played at the same time. I was a bit annoyed about that weekend. I'd asked for Manly versus Sydney FC at Valentine Sports Park, close to where I live, and I got sent to Wollongong. I was like, well, that's not what I wanted, but okay.
Something you gotta do, like, go on. There's so many little grounds, and I kind of imagine it's the same in New Zealand as well. People get to know the little grounds, and I think we're keen to get somebody on who can really talk about the New Zealand leagues as well, and then have all of that inside information. I think the thing is, like, it's fun, even if you don't support either of the teams, even if you don't support any of the players. It's really good to show up to. And this year we had the Sapphire Cup as well, which you called the Final Four.
Yeah. Yep. So the Sapphire Cup, it's the women's knockout competition for Football New South Wales clubs. Football New South Wales have been incredibly slow in getting this up. We're the last state fed to have a women's knockout cup, which is frankly embarrassing. I can't believe it's taken so long. So the general consensus is now that all the push behind it, behind finally creating the Sapphire Cup, is so they can have a women's Australia Cup. So obviously there's a men's version, but and of course you can't have an Australia Cup if Football New South Wales don't have a knockout tournament. So hopefully we see the women's Australia Cup will be interesting very soon. Although their first challenge, if players are playing NPL and A-League women, who plays for who? So does Isabel Gomez play for Northern Tigers or Central Coast Mariners? They might have to sort that out. Of course, the best way to sort that out is full-time professionalism for A-League women. So then then the players don't have to choose anymore. But yeah, hopefully we're not too far off that. But yeah, by the way, called the Sapphire Cup. So this is well before I think this is well before any of us were following Australian women's football, I think. But the predecessor to A-League Women was the WNSL, or also known as the Ansett Summer Series. So basically, one team for each state, and New South Wales team was called the Sapphires, so that's why it's called the Sapphire Cup. Now, the final was between Apia Leichhardt and Northern Tigers at Leichhardt Oval. So Apia getting lucky with the choice of ground there, but so really, I wasn't expecting to be asked for commentary, but it was good to do a two-person call as well, with Nicola Pos there, who's been covering the NPL women's for a decade now, and knows the competition. So Ben's heard his voice a lot as well, I'm sure. But yeah, just it kind of led to that kind of challenge about these overlapping seasons that we were talking about, because Apia, they had done a deal with Melbourne City, and Melbourne City allowed Rihanna Polachina and Holly McNamara to play, and it really made a difference. Northern Tigers could not work a similar deal with Central Coast Mariners, so they did not have Isabel Gomez or Sarah Willisey, and you could see Izzy Gomez really missing from that midfield, because Izzy Gomez, I think Dean, you were there at the semi-final where she basically best player on the park by miles, really ran the midfield. Yeah,
I'm pretty biased, but I always think she's the best player on the
yeah,
park.
Actually I remember watching Izzy play futsal as a teenager for up in the northern suburbs, and yeah, best player at the club there as well. So I think we're used to saying that.
Do you know what Izzy Gomez's favorite item of clothing is?
I do not.
It's a yellow card again.
Ah, yeah. I mean, would have been a red cardigan when she was playing futsal, but
Oh, she's got one of those.
Believe it or not, she has calmed down. By the way, from 4 years ago.
You came up with the term the old farm derby, didn't you?
No, that's Dale Roots, who does the Beyond 90 podcast with me. So that was in a group chat. We were, because of Bulls FC Academy and MacArthur Rams, we were like brainstorming farm related ones. Dale won it with the old farm. So, I mean, there were others, the Barnyard Battle, the Farmyard Fracas, but
what's the best pun? What's the best thing you've ever slipped in the commentary?
Oh, duh, where do I start? Yeah, no, I don't think I have one related to Kiwis or Phoenix.
Good.
See, yeah, a reference to my ethnic background. I called a game, a second-tier game between Central Coast Mariners and St. George FC. Central Coast had Philippines international Chiara Fontanilla in goal. She was very vocal, loves screaming at a defense to push up, especially after set pieces. And so I said, I haven't heard a Filipino woman yell that much since the last time I made my mother angry. And that's one of the I have them written on my phone somewhere, but there was if I have one more, no, just actually, I don't know, talk amongst yourselves while I try and find it on my phone. I did write them all down, but it was there's another one.
My favorite random moment was watching Bankstown City play, and Susan Fong Sum Cam starts having this argument with a spectator. And then she turns around, she says, "Shut the fuck up, Mum." And then I love the NPL.
Yes.
It's hilarious.
So Ben, just while we've got you, because it's a bit late that way, as well as the NPL, what else did you watch? New Zealand domestic?
Yeah, so I watched the Phoenix reserves, both men and women, and they play in Wellington, and then they get automatically promoted to like the National League, where it's all the North Island, South Island, play for like 9 games, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not allowed to go into like the finals for like the top 2. So there's like 10 teams. There's like 9 games, and then the top 2 go into like a final where they play each other. But the Phoenix aren't allowed in for some reason.
Well, just thinking about the NPL this season, what was the game of the season for you? Since you watched it a hell of a lot more than me.
Game of the season. It's a hard one, you know.
Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot. Just I'm trying to think of my game of the season now.
I don't know. I would say probably against the Wellington Olympic. We didn't win. I think we lost like 3-1. But it was the last, all throughout the whole game, we're a very like understrength team, because a lot of the main reserves players were out training with the A-League team. So it was a lot of like the third team players, and they really held their own for like a lot of the game up to like the 80th minute when they considered the 2 goals. So I think that's the best game, because we were like the underdogs by quite a fair bit.
Good, thank you. Sorry, Eric, did you find anything on your phone?
Oh, wait, I was looking.
You're fascinated by that.
Okay. Going back to my Catholic upbringing, I was like, was calling a men's game between Blacktown and Sydney FC Academy on Easter Sunday, and I said Blacktown were winning 4-0, and I said if Sydney FC get anything out of this game, it'll be the biggest comeback seen on an Easter weekend in about 2,000 years. So I saw the camera operator laugh as well. I was really proud of that one.
You don't sort of watch Twitter feeds while you're doing the commentary, so you get that instant feedback. Right?
With a couple of lines, I have gotten messages and like have discovered that people have been watching based on, because I do keep track of my notifications. It's more just in case something's wrong, and I might be able to. Something's wrong with the stream, I might be able to address that, or if there's no graphics, or I need to give more score updates and stuff like that. That's why. But yeah, actual Twitter feeds, nah, I don't really. I try to multitask, but yeah, scrolling social feeds is a bit beyond me.
Good. Yeah. Same. And I'm just a spectator.
So I was thinking we could cover predictions for the A-League women's season. I'm not talking about going like first to last kind of thing, but who do you reckon? Who do you reckon's going to win? Who do you reckon's going to get wooden spoon? Where do you think the Knicks are going to come?
Goodness me. Who do I? Let's see. So, actually, this does remind me. Hopefully, this Beyond 90 squad page is fairly up to date. It is kind of our job, but Megan's not gonna like this. I am so uninspired by the Wanderers squad. I just don't see. I'm not sure where their goals are coming from. Although best of luck to Millie Clegg, but it's just I don't see how they're going to get many results. Also, they have to replace Claire Hunt, who was like the one good thing about their squad, and now she's at Paris Saint-Germain. So
they've also lost Malia Steinmetz.
They have, yes, to Nordsjælland in FC Nordsjælland in Denmark. Pleasingly, Nordsjælland means North Zealand, of course, which is what New Zealand is named after. So that was nice. That's nice.
So Wanderers for the spoon?
Yeah.
Who's winning it?
I can't. This is a boring prediction. I can't go past Sydney FC. I think the squad is. They've lost players, but they've just replaced them with other players, so they should be fine. I mean, hopefully Taylor Ray, this is the last ACL injury she'll have, because I mean, she should slot straight back into that midfield. Shay Connors is a good pickup. You know, Aideen Keane. They still somehow have Courtney Vine. Well, actually, I know why. I know why they still have Courtney Vine. They're just able. I think Courtney just doesn't want to move overseas. But yeah, and plays Kirsty Fenton was really impressive last year, so she'll be. And yeah, she's only 20 years old, so plenty of room to grow for Kirsty. Perth, I like Alexa Park because I'd like to see him whenever Ante Juric goes as being like the next Sydney FC coach. I think do feel like there's only so much he can do at Perth Glory, because I think all of Perth Glory's good seasons are when Sam Kerr was playing for them, so which makes sense. Going back to down the bottom, Newcastle I still think Newcastle have a bit more about them than the Wanderers, and they also have Melina Ayres. They've done well to get her from Melbourne Victory, and they also have Claudia Chico as well. So I mean, at least one side of the defense will be okay there. And we know, and I expect the usual Melbourne Victory, Melbourne City will be up there as well. I actually don't think Mariners won't make finals, but I think Mariners won't do too badly. And I really rate their coach, Emily Husband, who was 2022 NPL Coach of the Year, won the premiership by 11 points, and that was with nowhere near the best squad on paper. So I think especially, and the best thing about the Mariners is they planned this, like Emily Husband was named as the coach a long time ago, so which meant she's basically had while also being Sydney Uni head coach, she's been able to plan and, you know, see who she wants and build the squad that she wants. And because her assistant coach is Jake Stevenson from Northern Tigers, so very unsurprisingly, they have a squad full of Sydney Uni and Northern Tigers players.
Yes, yep. Some quality players.
Yeah.
You've not told us where the Knicks are going to come.
Oh, wait. See. Not last. I don't think
not
they'll be last. Yes. I think, well, that's, I mean, they, you know what? They can't be last with Mackenzie Barry and Kate Taylor, the best centre-back duo in the competition. So obviously not. They got the Wanderers covered. I feel like they got the Jets covered. I'm not sure who else. I'm sure they'll think it's a must to finish ahead of the Mariners, who are just coming back into the comp. So we'll find out more on Saturday as to how that prediction will go out. I think they've got those three teams, but yeah, finals is a bit of a stretch, especially although actually Canberra's quite young now, and they've had player losses as well. So Wellington, you know, they could, you know, they've given Canberra a couple of touch-ups in the past. So yeah, that's those I think I mean, they'll obviously try and win every game, and they beat Sydney last year, so they can beat anyone. But I think those 40 Canberra, Jets, Wanderers, and Central Coast, that'll be the kind of they'll definitely. I'm sure Wellington will be looking at them, thinking we could beat them. Also, Brisbane's actually a pretty young squad, so maybe them. Perth, it's good luck winning in Perth, but but if full home and away means Perth have to come to Wellington as well, so
Exactly.
that should be they'll be targeting that as well. So if we'd all love it if they make finals, but if they're safe, if they're in mid-table and nowhere near the spoon, I think that's a successful season.
I would agree with all of that. City or Sydney to win.
Yeah.
Wanderers, down the bottom, and I'd be thrilled with a mid-table finish for the Knicks.
Yeah.
We saw them
also Western United, just Western United. They've kept Hannah Keane, added Catherine Zimmerman, and they've added Grace Maher as well. So, oh my God, Grace Maher, the best passer in the competition. I don't think it's particularly close. So, their forwards are going to have a field day, I think, because Grace Maher feeding through balls to them. And Chloe Lagazo, of course. Oh, how could I forget her?
Yeah. That's a pretty star-studded lineup.
Yeah.
Ben, what about your thoughts?
I think mine's a totally opposite. I reckon you got to back the team the whole way. Temple, Paul, we're going to make top 6 and we're winning the league, I reckon.
Oh, wait, it's a 16 final series, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I forgot. Sorry, I was still talking like it was a 14 final series. Oh, might as well back them in to make the finals. That's it. I'm sorry. I'll change my prediction. They'll get in there in 6th place.
That's what our men are best at doing. Getting in there in 6th place, losing in the first round of finals.
Yep.
Classic Knicks.
It's what we do best.
So are there any follow-up questions for Eric? No?
I think we're looking at the list, and I've asked all the ones that I...
We did. Thank you for coming on, Eric. I still feel confused about how football, like the semi-pro football level in Australia functions, but that's not your fault. That's the fact that I've sat there and had this conversation with a number of people over the last couple of NPL seasons, and it is bewildering.
Yeah.
And there are lots of problems, but we are grateful that it is it's fun to go to, and also that it's been quite a nice place for our next players to go and spend the winter. So thanks for having a chat about all those things and about your favorite hot chocolate and about your commentating. So thanks for coming on.
No problem. Thanks, Holly. Thanks, Dean. Thanks, Ben. It's been a lovely chat, and it's good to do something different.